I want to welcome everyone to the School Transportation Nation podcast. I'm Tony Corpin, publisher and president of School Transportation News, and this episode is brought to you by TransFinder, the leader in school bus routing software. And we'll also be hearing from Lea Bogle, president and CEO of Premier Wireless, and they are the experts in school bus technology solutions. My illustrious co-host, Mr. Ryan Gray. Welcome, Ryan.
Hey, Tony. Hello, everybody. Glad to be back. A little bit later, I will also be speaking with Manuel Campos Jr., the Director of Transportation for Somerset Independent School District outside of San Antonio, Texas.
Excellent, Ryan. Looking forward to that. Before we jump into the episode, are you looking for routing software, parent app, driver app, GPS, inventory management solution, location intelligence, maps? You've guessed it. TransFinder has it all with Route Finder Plus, Stop Finder, Wayfinder, Service Finder, Viewfinder. TransFinder is now your all-in-one solutions provider for school transportation departments. That's because TransFinder is a leader in everything that they do. With more than 3 decades of experience working for 3,000 school districts in North America, they've seen everything and built their solution around their clients and what they want and need. And sometimes they didn't even know what they wanted. Yep, TransFinder gets you, and they got this. Email marketing@transfinder.com or call 800-373-3609 to learn more. Don't forget to mention STN Podcast so they know we sent you. All right, Ryan, I want to dive in a little bit about the conferences. We're getting ready for the fall. I am actually headed next week to the NSTA meeting in Milwaukee. Looking forward to seeing some friends there in the private contractor space, vendor partners. Should be a great event. So look forward to bringing back some information in a coming episode on that. And then we've got our conferences, STN Expo Indianapolis, October 1st through the 5th. That is the first one on deck. Keynote speaker Ross Bernstein was inducted into the Speaker Hall of Fame. Very, very limited, exclusive crowd. So we are bringing you the best of the best with our keynote. He also is going to be leading the conversation at our Transportation Directors Summit as well. So if you guys have not signed up yet, be sure, go on stnexpo.com, click on Indianapolis, get signed up. We are excited for that. And Ryan, you might have some interesting updates as well for Indy. Why don't you share?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this will be the first time in a year and a half or longer that industry folks have been able to attend the Child Passenger Safety on School Buses 8-hour seminar. That's the NHTSA sponsored training, the hands-on training. So we're just overjoyed to be able to do that again. So that is going to be on the docket, as well as our National Inspector training. So it would be great to have those back in the fold, lining up a whole bunch of sessions. We're bringing in child psychologists to talk about, getting back from this whole COVID thing, talking about the effect of that stress and anxiety on employees as well as students. Seat belts, importance of maintenance training, developing crisis communications plans, a whole bunch on tap, looking at obtaining grant funds to purchase clean energy vehicles and the resulting new equipment that's possible from that. Lots of great stuff on tap. Hope to see you all there. Tony, just a couple days ago, I purchased my ticket for Indianapolis, so no going back. I actually cashed in some of those funds that I had to put on the side from trips that we had to cancel last year because of COVID. So I'm locked and loaded. Got for my birthday a couple of weeks ago, got a new organizer for my luggage. So I'm ready to rock.
Nice. Yeah, I've been seeing airlines, the prices are coming down a bit for travel. Got to lock in those specials. I mean, my airline, Southwest, they're always running a deal. But yeah, that's good. And then we're hosting that at the JW Marriott. So you guys can go on Hotel and Travel and book your room through our website. We got some special rates at the JW for you for the show in Indy. It's downtown, great spot, good restaurants. Looking forward to getting back to that St. Elmo's. They got the delicious shrimp cocktails, Ryan. Some to look forward to, the famous St. Elmo's.
Spicy. Yeah, that horseradish, man. Wow. packs a punch. But speaking of packing a punch, we've been talking a lot about electric lately. Certainly, last week we talked a good deal about the surface transportation reauthorization bill and the infrastructure bill. So got a little bit more movement on both of those. Heard from our consultants, our little mice up on Capitol Hill who are busy chasing the cheese, chasing that funding, trying to make sure that school bus is well represented. So the latest bipartisan deal framework proposed for the infrastructure bill at $7.5 billion for electric school buses and ferries looks like that is coming down a little bit more. The latest numbers being thrown about or being heard is $5 billion. So still a big fight going on up there, trying to, again, wheel and deal, seeing whether it will be a DERA add-on or a separate EPA program. So a lot of work coming out on that, maybe even this week. So stay tuned on that. It's really looking like the Democrats are going to be using the budget reconciliation agreement in the Senate. Still a top line number for the infrastructure at $3.5 trillion. The assumption is right now from those in the know in the school bus industry is about $20 billion for electric school buses. There's no language yet on this. But the thought is that the Clean Commute for Kids bill, which was introduced earlier this year by Senator Alex Padilla in California, as well as Representative Tony Cardenas, also of California, that's looking like it could be the vehicle that could be used. It's a leading contender, at least. So it sounds like it would use manufacturer vouchers as an easier way to get funds out rather than a grant program. So the OEMs are actively involved in those negotiations, as is the National School Transportation Association and others. But again, kind of what we've been saying, kind of sound like the new broken record. Last year, it was talking about COVID. And this year, it's talking about the infrastructure bill. Still a lot of details to work out and many miles to go.
Ryan, can you clarify real quick, just so the listeners got it straight? Because there's a lot of funding being thrown around, right? Like we were talking about, it was $20 billion, then it was $15 billion, but then they got to split it with transit and infrastructure. You're talking about a whole separate legislative bill here. So I just want the listeners to kind of get some perspective that we're talking about two different pots of money.
Sure. Well, it's really all one pot of money. But what we're talking about is look at this legislation and consider it like a pie. So we're cutting it into pieces, because when we're talking about that $15 billion that was cut in half to $7.5 billion basically for vehicles and then $7.5 billion for infrastructure, that was that bipartisan deal. So there was a group of 20 senators in both parties that basically try to come up with kind of more of a middle of the road proposal. So that's where that $15 billion comes from. The word is that the Biden administration, despite that, is still gung-ho on electric school buses. We learned earlier this year that President Biden was a school bus driver when he was in law school. So this is very near and dear to his heart. Vice President Kamala Harris, she visited Thomas Built Buses earlier this year. She was the original author of a Senate bill a couple years ago to fund electric school buses that's come back around. So yeah, there are different competing or at least related bills that are in the House and Senate. But what we're hearing is with this budget reconciliation agreement, that's essentially the Democrats saying, we don't think, if we go this route, we don't think we're going to have enough votes to pass a filibuster to get the 60 votes required for that passage. So we're going to use this reconciliation agreement where we're basically going to use just our simple majority to push it through. So that's where we're looking at potentially this Clean Commute for Kids bill surfacing for that $20 billion for electric school buses.
So I guess the moral of the story, Ryan, is there's going to be a fair amount of money for EV or zero emission, right? We can't give it all to EV, but because you never know how that's going to shake
It's looking that way, yes.
Yeah.
It's mostly, when you're talking to zero emissions, they are speaking electric, but I think that they're giving themselves some wiggle room because as of right now, the only zero emission from the tailpipe energy for school buses is electric. There's the potential of some other things, and we covered some of those in our virtual Green Bus Summit earlier this year. But right now, that's what we're talking about is electric.
Do you feel like we're going to be covering some of these topics at the conferences as well? I feel like as the wheel turns, the hamster's running on it. We're going to have more updates here in the fall. When is this stuff supposed to pass, Ryan? When or they're going to vote or do the reconciliation? What's the timing on this?
In the next couple months. So, what they're looking to do is they're looking to take the surface transportation reauthorization and roll that up under infrastructure. So we know that the fiscal year ends September 30th. So what that surface transportation reauthorization does is essentially fund the federal government, fund the U.S. Department of Transportation. So funds FMCSA and all its programs, NHTSA and all its programs, National Transportation Safety Board, and others. So in the past years, we've seen that deadline missed, and there would be continuing resolutions that need to get passed. That obviously is, it's always on the table, but that's kind of the time frame that we're looking at, is to get something past August, September timeframe. So again, a lot of details still need to be worked out. So all the folks up on Capitol Hill are firmly back in their offices from the 4th of July recess. So that's what they're working on right now. And as our little birdies up on Capitol Hill are telling us, still many miles to go.
Yeah, speaking of deadlines, August 13th, does anybody know what that deadline is? That is the FCC Emergency Connectivity Fund application deadline. Guys, if you have not applied yet, I highly recommend you take advantage of this federal program to access Wi-Fi for students on your school buses. Basically, you get reimbursed a reasonable amount, which pretty much is a fully loaded package with labor. Please contact your providers to learn more about this. It is just a golden opportunity to kind of help with that digital divide. So highly recommend that. And I know, Ryan, you're going to be talking to Manuel Campos here in just a sec about kind of what he's doing and how his district has leveraged these new funds, as well as using ESSER. So really curious to see what he has to say. But before we get to that, I'm going to be talking to Lea Bogle, Premier Wireless. All right, really excited to welcome Lea Bogle, President and CEO at Premier Wireless, to the podcast. Lea, welcome.
Hi, Tony. How are you today?
Excellent. We're super excited to have you on the podcast to unpack kind of what's going on in the world of technology and Wi-Fi. And it's kind of the topic du jour these days to talk about Wi-Fi. So I want to jump right into it with you. You guys are a leader in business technology solutions. And do you want to give us a little background on Premier, what you guys do, what the product stack looks like, and maybe share a little bit about how you're engaging school transportation with kind of what you have to offer?
Absolutely. Thanks, Tony. So we've been in business for almost 30 years now, and we've been working closely with schools since before 1999. This is my passion, to provide equity for all schools and all students, right? It really comes down to providing equity for all students so that everybody has an equal playing field. And when they graduate from high school, they have the same job opportunities. And with that, we've been focusing on closing the digital divide for several years. Before the pandemic, school bus Wi-Fi didn't always make sense because not all of the kids had a Chromebook. There were a lot of limited schools that had a one-to-one initiative. Post the pandemic, everybody has a Chromebook. So by putting Wi-Fi on school buses today, we're able to extend learning time for students. Beyond bus Wi-Fi, we provide the gamut of technology solutions for our clients. We've got the GPS, we've got student tracking, the parent app. Pretty much anything that you need, we can help a school district out with.
Now, Lea, in a conversation you and I had, you had mentioned a couple of students actually reached out to you specifically about, their cry for help. Like, we need Wi-Fi on our buses. Can you share a little bit of that story with our audience? Because I feel like it's about the kids, regardless of all the widgets we can put on the buses. How is it really helping the kids, and how much do they need it? Can you share a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So, like a lot of companies, we've got that little chat app on our website and had a little chat come up, and it was a person and they asked, can you tell us a little bit about their bus Wi-Fi? And I would reply. And then all of a sudden they would disappear. And then a couple of days later, they would respond and pick up the chat exactly where we left off. And then they would ask the next question. And this went on for 6 weeks. And finally, we set a time. And every time they wanted to meet, they could meet between 11:45 and 12:15. And I thought that was so strange. And so, anyways, we finally set up a meeting and I log on. And it was two students and one of their bus drivers. And they were reaching out and exploring bus Wi Fi because they want their school to have it. And it turned out that one of the students was a ninth grader. The other student was a 10th grader. And both of them were in athletics. One of them were in advanced classes. And they were like, our bus ride, we could be getting so much done when we're on the bus, but we can't do it. And so we come home from our games or we're doing this. We have to stay up until 12 or 1 o'clock at night and then get up the next morning at 6 a.m. for school. And they were like, it would be so helpful if we had it. And so we're in the process of talking to their district about putting bus Wi-Fi on. But kids want this technology. It's huge. It's so important for them.
So, just to bring the audience up to speed too, right? So we're talking Wi-Fi, and there is some federal funding out there that's got a pretty aggressive timeline on it. It's $7.17 billion offered by the FCC called the Emergency Connectivity Fund. So that's kind of why we're discussing Wi-Fi as well with Lea today too, because her company is able to help kind of look at what are the finance options. And I think one of the big questions that exists out there with this legislation is it gives these kind of numbers like 250, 400, what's reimbursable. Lea, what's the real deal on the reimbursement for this technology for school transportation operators?
So that's a really good question because there is so much confusion about it. And I had a conversation with USAC today. And I said, I need you to just verify and clarify that I'm right in my numbers. And they did. So that 250 number has nothing to do with bus Wi-Fi. That $400 has nothing to do with bus Wi-Fi. The 250 is for hotspots. It's a traditional hotspot, and that's strictly for the hardware. The bus Wi-Fi, per their FAQs that they have on there, is that it is fully fundable for reasonable cost. And reasonable cost, you should be able to put fully installed bus Wi-Fi, the entire solution on your bus for $1,500 or less. And then your monthly service, depending upon your carrier, is going to run somewhere just under $30 to $40 a month. And most of the carriers will put that on vacation during July and August or June and July, whatever those 2 months are. But the entire solution is fully fundable through the ECF, the Emergency Connectivity Fund today.
That's interesting. And what are some of the other ancillary benefits if someone takes advantage of this, right? So there's other things like data, you kind of touched on it, as well as other benefits that can be achieved by taking advantage of this. Do you want to share a little bit about that as well?
Absolutely. Depending on your solution provider, the benefits are going to be different, right? But the reality is GPS tracking is something that you should expect in your Wi-Fi solution because it's a core competency of the router itself. And if you already have GPS on your buses, no worries. You don't have to replace what you have. You can if you want, but you will have this as a way, if you don't have it, of knowing where your buses are or a redundancy to the system you have. And one of the other big benefits, Tony, that I hear transportation directors talk about all the time, and that is, since we're putting internet connectivity on your bus, we can also give you access to your cameras in real time so that instead of having to go out to the yard and pull the hard drive, you actually have the ability to log in and see what's going on in your bus remotely. And that is huge for so many transportation directors and their operation departments.
Super interesting, Lee. Appreciate you coming on. You want to share a little bit about where people can find you? How do they learn more about Premier Wireless?
Absolutely. They can visit us online. Our web address is www.premierwireless.com. And Premier is just spelled Premier. No E at the end. People get that confused all the time. Or they can give us a call at our office, and it's 281-667-0404.
Thanks so much, Lee. Really appreciate you sharing some of your insights and stories. Love the one about the students. You know, it's about the kids, guys, and it's about changing these kids' lives and just closing that educational kind of divide that we're seeing out there, that inequity. So really advise you all to take advantage of this funding. There is a very short window, less than 30 days to apply. Don't say, hey, I'm going to apply, a few months from now. No, the funding is not going to be out there. You don't have to use the funding, but you got to at least apply and go through the process. So be sure you take advantage of this because it's kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity, in my opinion, for school transportation to exercise their opportunity to advance their technology stack. So thanks so much, Lee. Have a great week.
Thanks, Tony.
Hey, next up, Ryan's talking to Manuel Campos Jr., Director of Transportation, Somerset ISD near San Antonio. He'll be talking all about his technology stack and all the things they're investing in. Really excited to hear what he has to say.
Welcome to the School Transportation Nation stage. Manuel Campos Jr., Director of Transportation for Somerset Independent School District in San Antonio. Manuel, thanks for joining the School Transportation Nation.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity, Ryan.
Glad to have you on board. So when we're talking a lot about American Rescue Plan and the elementary and secondary school emergency relief plans that are in place, Taylor Hannon has some good articles lately about the U.S. Department of Education approving some of those state plans. Texas is one of them to the tune of $4.1 billion with a B. And Somerset ISD has gotten some of that money. Isn't that correct, Manuel?
Yes, sir, that is correct. Our district received roughly about $10 million in those funds.
$10 million. Wow, that is no chump change at all. So what are you spending that money on?
Well, we were very in much need. It's my first year as a transportation director here in Somerset, and we were very much of need of push-to-talk radios on our buses and tracking devices for our buses and our students. And so we were able to, use some ESSER funds to purchase these software and these radios and hopefully get them installed here before the school year starts. I know the school board is very excited about us having the ability for parents to track the buses and track their students. So it was a huge need, and they approved that on Monday to be able to purchase this equipment.
Okay. So what kind of communication equipment were you running previously?
We were using cell phones. We're out in the rural areas, so we had a lot of areas that were for dead spots and stuff. And so it would cause the buses to have to pull over, engage the safety protocols, and then call us back for us to communicate. And so that would take time. If a student was on the wrong bus or something, it was real difficult to communicate with drivers. But with this, we'll be able to make an all call and get, feedback pretty quickly on any child that may be misplaced on a bus.
I was going to ask you about that coverage area and kind of your rural setting there outside of San Antonio. Tell us a little bit more about your fleet. How many buses are you running? How many drivers do you have?
We have about 60 drivers, and we run about 40 routes. We have about 40 regular routes, and along with the special needs routes, and then in between routes that we do for our early college program. We take our kiddos from the early college, high school to the nearby junior college, and so we have several activities throughout, and of course the field trips that come about and the athletic events and other events that come about. So we'll be able to address about 38 route buses and about 2 activity buses with these devices, the push-to-talk and the connected bus crosswalk 12 devices.
Okay, tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, the push to talk, again, it was going to help us improve communication greatly. We can inform drivers of an incident, traffic incident, or there might be a fire that we're not able to go to that road and redirect them. So that'll help with that. And then at K to 12, we'll be able to make sure that it really helps our sub drivers. It'll give them the opportunity to run a route that they're not normally on and know exactly where kids live, where kids need to be dropped off without accidentally dropping off a kid at a wrong home or having a kid board the wrong bus. They'll be able to, each kid will have an ID and they'll swipe it on the tablet and it'll verify whether the child belongs on that particular bus or not. So that'll help a lot, and it'll help the kids, and it'll help the sub drivers. The other thing is the parents will be able to download an app and track the bus and know exactly, the bus is down the block from me. I got to make sure I go outside and collect little Johnny. Or it's early in the morning, it's raining heavily. They keep them closer to the home, and then the bus is about 2 houses down. You're gonna have to get out there and be ready to board that bus. So that's going to help us tremendously. Be able to gauge the speed on the bus and track the bus's route and make sure that all that is safe. Help us with all the different reports that we need to gather for our reports, state reports and things like that, mileage and rider counts and of that sort.
So you just touched on what a lot of folks term key performance indicators, a big reason that people are using technology. So you just touched on some of them, obviously on-time arrival and knowing where kids are. What are some of the other KPIs that you guys are actively gathering or looking to gather, and how can technology help with that?
Well, we're looking to look at the Emerging Connectivity Fund and look at Wi-Fi, getting full Wi-Fi on the buses like that. When students, are traveling home or they're out on field trips, they may be able to do some homework and things of that nature. So that's the next step, that we're looking to implement.
Okay. So, and I wanted to ask you about Wi-Fi because, part of that ECF money that you're looking to tap into. So you don't currently have Wi-Fi, correct? But I know that some of the folks in your area do have Wi-Fi, or at least in other parts of Texas, not too far away. Have you learned lessons or been paying attention to what those folks have been doing with Wi-Fi to try to determine how you're going to make it work for you?
Yes, we would like to eventually get them on our buses, and we, we're such a rural area and stuff, and we've learned through COVID that although we were able to furnish our kids with laptops and stuff, we had to go back and purchase a lot of hotspots. And so you see a lot of districts have buses parked throughout their districts in different areas that may not have the ability to, for the students to get on the internet and stuff. So that's something that we've learned from this, that, we might be able to get rid of hotspots, but, move a bus in that area to help kids, or even board the bus and work out of a bus, in those situations if we ever come through that again.
So you're going to be looking at having the Wi-Fi on routes, or is it going to be on field trips, activity trips, sports trips, all of the above? Kind of what are you looking to utilize first?
All the above. We're going to, look at everything and look at all of it. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Our kids, the kids, the first batch of kids boards the bus roughly about 6 a.m. in the morning. And then, it's about, some have a good little drive to get to school and things like that. So that they'll have some time to hop on and do some things. And of course, the longer field trips for athletic events or other events, they'll have the ability to complete some work on those longer trips.
So you're literally weeks away from starting the new school year. You're probably knee deep in getting routes ready, getting drivers trained. What's the biggest priority for you in your office right now in prepping for the 21-22 school year?
It's just looking at all the different trainings, the new trainings for this year that we're going to look at. Of course, the push to talk will require some training, with the different FCC guidelines and regulations and stuff. We got to make sure that we stay calm and professional on that radio. We also have to look at training them on the tablets, for all the different features that those tablets will have. We'll leave the pen and paper behind on the pre-trip and post-trip inspection reports that we have to do daily, or each time we move a bus, we have to do a pre-trip and check, tires and oils and lights and things like that. We'll be able to do that on the tablet now. So that's a training that's going to have to take some time for those individuals to learn that piece.
What other technology are you looking to adopt in the near future? Any wish list items they have?
I'm not too sure right now. We're happy where we're going right now with these two items. I'm sure there's other things that will come up. We'll have to look at it a little closer and see what else is available.
Okay. And Texas, obviously one of the few states that has a law mandating 3-point lap shoulder belts. So where is the district right now in implementing those on the school buses?
Currently, we just have those, for our bus drivers. We go without seat belts on our buses. We did have a very bad accident last month, and the bus is very secure. Thank goodness the bus was very secure. It was a pretty bad head-on collision and a very few injuries, nothing major, and it just brought out how safe these buses are.
Okay, and I believe with the law, is it that because school districts can opt out of that requirement, so is that the route you guys took?
Yes, sir. We had to go to the board, and the board actually had to opt out of purchasing buses with the seatbelts.
Okay. And another big topic that everyone's dealing with, driver shortage. So you mentioned early on that you have about 60 bus drivers for about 40 routes or so. So it looks like, at least on the surface, you guys are doing pretty well. How is the new school year shaping up in terms of your drivers?
Well, in that 60 count, I misspoke. We've got, included our mechanics, our 4 mechanics, and our aides. So, that brings the number of drivers down and stuff. So we've spent some time recruiting, putting some banners out throughout the district, talking to drivers if they have any individuals that they might consider coming, put a brochure together and have some a job fair. We had one job fair. And so we're probably 3 drivers short, actual drivers short. We'll see what it turns out from there. We can manage, I think we can manage our business being those 3 drivers short, but hopefully we don't get into a situation where COVID dictates that drivers have to stay home for a certain amount of days and things like that. So we should be fine.
Certainly, commonality we hear across the industry, all hands on deck. So the director, you might still have your CDL, the mechanics. It's kind of employing all hands on deck to fill those routes.
Correct. It's all hands on deck, whether it's driving a van to a campus and shuttling. But yeah, it's all the mechanics are CDL, and they've driven the buses for us. Our transportation supervisors, our trainer, everyone that even some aides that can drive buses without CDL, not the buses but other vehicles without CDL have helped out.
Okay. And you also mentioned your special needs route. So I wanted to touch on that before we close. How many students overall are you transporting across the district? And then how many are special needs?
We're probably transporting about 2,000 kiddos throughout the district. Just did the numbers the other day. I don't have them in front of me. We have 4 routes that are dedicated to our special needs. 6, I would say about 18 kiddos.
Okay. So pretty manageable, but yet all those kids, they do have, everyone has their own needs, but that's part of the training element too, is, making sure that you're keeping all your drivers and your aides on top of everything. In terms of training, everything seems to be back to quote unquote normal now. I know Texas has been open for business for quite some time, one of the earliest in the nation. Is it that you guys are all back in person, even in the department training and kind of returning to that normal or what it used to look like before COVID?
We pretty much are returning back to normal. We do go into one of the junior high cafeterias and spread ourselves out, keep some distance still, and work on keeping distance. We have a ready room that's a good size ready room and stuff, and we kind of stagger in to clock in and things like that. But our trainings, most of our trainings and in services, we go into a nearby cafeteria that's a lot larger to host us there.
Good deal. Well, thanks so much, Manuel, for joining us today. I really appreciate it. And best of luck to you and your team as you embark on the new school year.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity.
Hey, special thanks to Lee, Manuel, and my co-host, Mr. Ryan Gray, for all the great conversations today. We appreciate you, TransFinder and Premier Wireless, for sponsoring today's episode. Be sure to check out stnonline.com for all the latest news, expert analysis on all things school transportation. Learn more and register today for all the fall conferences: STN Expo Indianapolis, STN Expo Reno, and the Transporting Students Disabilities Conference, Frisco, Texas. You can go to stnexpo.com. We've got everything listed, dates, info, speakers, hotels. We got it all for you guys. Thanks for listening. Don't forget, subscribe, stream, review this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, stnpodcast.com, wherever you listen to podcasts. We love you, nation. We'll see you next week.